As you might well know, snails are fascinating organisms, and although I am an ichthyologist, I have a massive appreciation for snails. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about them, about the shells, maybe a bit about their anatomy and biology. So here I have members of the genus Tylomelania. So these are likely a mixture of different species, and although they might look very similar, there's many species in this genus and they do look very similar with variations. So I believe this one here I think I know how old it is. There's two with this coloration, and one was the first ever one that I bred. So this was the first offspring, and this snail is around what would it be, since 2018, 2019, that sort of time period. So about 3 years, 3 years old. And you can see the size here, but they do get to much larger sizes. So this is probably one of my larger ones. And you can see they have these very prehistoric like shells, and other mollusks have had shells like this before, not just snails, marine ones in times long gone. And other snails that are still extant, still exist, actually do have shells like this. It's not exclusive, and you might see it obviously. Faunus, I think it is, which is a brackish species, and also in Malaysian trumpet snails. So it is a very common form. Not all snails are those little round things with those lovely shells we see. So snails are often either hermaphrodites, or they are, I think the word is dioecious, so they have is it dioecious? They can either be dioecious or monoecious if you know plants, but they can either be hermaphrodites, simultaneous hermaphrodites, or not. So these are not. They have distinct males and females, but there's no way I could see of sexing them. They are also viviparous. They produce a live offspring. I've never seen it actually happen, but if I zoom, never seen it happen, but they do produce live offspring, and you can see there's some size compared to those that produce eggs, and those babies are a lot smaller. It's quite normal for that to happen. But you can see the flesh colour, I think, is the easiest way to define the different species of Tylomelania, and I have done a video on them before. But I'm going to talk quickly about the shells. So the shells point in a certain way, and this is known as chirality, and generally the shell needs to be the same direction for them to be able to breed. So the spinning, it needs to be facing the same direction. So that's probably an easy way to tell different species, if they're different species, but all of these point the same way, and they're likely not all the same species. Bit of reflection. But you can see here that their shells are still very different. Some are very much more indented than others. But also if we look at, well, firstly, they build the shells themselves. Some people believe that they find them. They're not hermit crabs. Mollusks build the shell themselves. And this means that an important fact is they build the shells depending on the water parameters and their diet, and this has a heavy influence. So I would never quite, and you can see this really dark one here, whether that's one of my originals, I don't know. I can't track individuals. But this does mean that the shape, the size, the quality, the colour of the shell is probably influenced by the water parameters themselves. A lot of snails are found in softer water and in lower pHs and hardnesses. I've kept these in soft water. They have no issue. So I think a lot of it is getting the calcium a lot from the diet as well, to build these very ornate shells. And that might also influence the colour. But I would say the biggest indicator that maybe the water parameters are indicating colour would be more, say, in this snail here, which you can see is darker and then lighter. So maybe water parameters changed for this sort of region of the shell that grew. Could this have been one of those ones I bought a year ago for much harder water and now are much softer? Here the different species might be an influencing factor. And then we've got this one here. So this one, a lot of Tylomelania are wild caught, and that's why you see a lot of damage on the shells, and depending on the age you get a nice quality of shell. This one, actually looking at it, must be wild caught. It's lost the tip of its tail. That's quite common. Whereas this one still has that tip of the tail. So maybe these are... This one even has that transition. So maybe it's existed when I had softer water or much harder water. But here is a good example. So this doesn't have any one home. Basically, it's nothing there. But you can see it's got if I put it underwater, it's easy to see, an awful lot of damage. And that happens. So they can rasp on each other's shells. This could be from corrosion. It could be from how it was brought. I don't know if maybe this could have been a snail that... Obviously, I do have empty shells. I don't know how long they live. I just know that these... I've got another one like this and I haven't seen any empty shells. So maybe at least, 3 to 4, 5 years. So maybe this one got predated on, didn't survive. Or could it be a different species? But you can see a lot of the damage there from likely being well caught. It's probably rasped on, thrown around, and it is quite substantial damage. And I keep the shells just because I think they're quite nice and I can't be bothered to throw them away. But snails are really fascinated with these shells. They do tell a history, and obviously you could probably tell what they've been eating. And you can see here, this one's got focus, bit of damage there, and a lot of sort of mechanical damage. This looks like it's before, if I'm correct, and this one is, that bit is when it was wild, in the wild. That's probably a lot of abrasion. This one, still, I don't know. It's really difficult to tell, whereas you can compare to the quality of the one that's bred in captivity. Even if they might be different species and their flesh colours are very different. It's impossible to track who's breeding to who, so I'd recommend if you're buying rabbit snails, buy similar appearances or same appearances, and then that would be more ideal to get a breeding group. But I would say most people aren't probably fussed over there. If you are breeding and you'll mix it, there's quite a few different species, which they are, and whether there is hybridisation I wouldn't know. But so snails, they have their eyes. These ones, I think they have their eyes just by these beautiful tentacles. Gastropod, which is snails and slugs. Gastro meaning stomach, pod meaning foot. They have one foot, which is like, so it's like stomach foot is basically what they're called. Of course, there's massive diversity in snails. I've only got 3 different taxa, and I don't keep the land snails anymore. But so they have one tooth, which I'll show you photos or videos of. That's known as a radula, that rasps a lot like, I guess, similar convergently to loricarids with their teeth, but it's that one tooth, and you can hear it on, if you have African land snails and you keep them in a certain type of terrarium like glass, you can hear them rasping on it. You can also feel it if you hold them, but they have that one radula tooth. And snails mollusks are quite diverse. They've been around a long time. Obviously we've got nautilus. It's probably the most primitive looking of what's extant at the moment. But we had ammonites. I don't know where they fit compared to gastropods. Generally, snails don't pick up, don't pull them off things. These guys are very good at retracting. They will have a so the perclum's the entrance to their shell. They do have a like a door, so they will retract quite quickly into it, like if you look here. So you're not too worried about, unlike African land snails, pulling them off and damaging the mantle. But they are absolutely fascinating, and I do occasionally buy more, but I've got assassin snails at the moment who really have taken a real attack almost to the offspring of these guys. But you can see I have quite a few, and I've probably only brought around 10, but they're doing absolutely amazing, especially if you look at the size of them, like my hand in comparison. And I think if you want something very exotic looking to your tank that doesn't look like a normal snail, or these just really show what freshwater diversity there is, and they are threatened in the wild. These guys come from Sulawesi, where they're threatened by pollution. Does it mean keeping them in captivity? Wild caught is a very complex thing, so pollution and invasive species is the main issue to them. But they are bred in such high numbers. Does that mean they'd be released to captivity if they're bred in such high numbers? Probably not, because how do we know they're not even hybridising? And how do we locate these to their individual lakes? Anyway, I'm going to finish this video now. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.